Thanks, Richard. Like Mike, my brain's telling me to go to sleep. I'm going to try and keep you awake for the next half an hour if you can oblige me if you see me starting to nod off. It's a pleasure to be back in Tasmania, where I had an unforgettable experience here a couple of years ago as part of my Nuffield adventure. I had the opportunity to visit some incredible businesses run by inspiring individuals, many of whom are in the room today. I'd like to thank Rachel and the team at Berries Australia for inviting me back and to this amazing event, which is an inspiration to berry associations around the world. It's a privilege to stand before you all, the very best of the Australian and I would say global berry industry. So, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the challenges that we've all faced. The last few years have been tough. Returns have failed to keep up with skyrocketing production costs. In the UK, these have increased by over 40% in the last 4 years. This has led to some alarming headlines, culminating in a recent survey in which over half of British berry growers say they're no longer profitable, and almost 40% don't know if they're going to be in business in 2 years' time. Quite worrying stats, given the strong demand for berries that Mike has outlined. However, despair cannot be a strategy. I therefore focus my Nuffield study on how we as growers can carve out a larger share of the berry value chain. The solutions are out there, and I'm excited to get the opportunity to share and discuss some of these with you this morning and later over the next few days. So, I had the opportunity to travel to the US, to Canada, Norway, the Netherlands, of course the UK, Singapore, Japan, New Zealand, and of course the highlight here in Australia, where I spent an amazing few days in the Yarra Valley and also here in Tasmania. And thanks very much to the IDOs, Angela and Mark at the time, who took the time to show me around, and very grateful for that. So this morning, we're going to look at breeding and production before focusing on marketing. I believe the future is bright. I believe we can grow more berries. We can grow bigger, sweeter, more nutritious berries, and most importantly, I believe that we can grow them more profitably. So let's dive in. I've been immersed in berries almost all my life, and I truly believe that we work in the most exciting, vibrant, fast-paced industry, producing a healthy product that customers just can't get enough of. I grew up on our family farm in Angus, on the east coast of Scotland, where my passion for farming was sparked at an early age. After leaving university in the late 90s, I ventured to Poland to broaden my horizons. And then in 2003, I returned home and joined Angus Soft Fruits. At that time, it was a small business. We had just 8 people. If I fast forward 20 years, I'm proud to lead a team of over 100 passionate berry specialists spread across 5 countries. Together, we've transformed the business into what it is today, which is a testament to the passion, commitment, and hard work of all those involved. So I'm going to play you a short video now to tell you a little bit more about the business. I click again. Yeah. So, our business was established 30 years ago by 3 farmers, Lockie Porter, his father Willie, and his cousin, my father, James Gray. The founding ethos was about creating direct relationships with customers. Our mission at Angus Soft Fruits is to deliver great tasting berries that will delight our customers each and every day. From humble beginnings in the mid-90s, we've grown the business from a short seasonal operation to turning over around £150 million, supplying between 10 and 15% of all the berries sold in the UK. The business is evenly split between UK and import fruit. We're vertically integrated, so we're breeders. At heart, we're farmers, both in the UK and increasingly in other countries. We source from other like-minded growers, and we market direct to retailers, predominantly in the UK, but also in Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. This integration gives us control over availability, quality, price, and varieties, and of increasing importance, ethical and sustainability practices. At the heart of our success is our incredible team of over 100 passionate berry specialists. One of the key lessons of my Nuffield travels was the profound impact of investing in people, which sadly is not often the case in farming, certainly in the UK. I regularly challenge our growers to consider how much they spend on training and development and compare it with what they spend on engine oil. Both are required to keep the wheels of our businesses turning smoothly. On my travels, the most successful businesses truly valued and invested in their teams. One of the best examples was in Norway, where I spent a fascinating few days with Osmond Bertnice, who grows lettuce and potatoes. Osmond's pack house has large windows to let in natural light, which he explained that the boost in productivity that he gets more than makes up for the extra cost. And more so than that, every year he takes his entire team of over 30 people, managers, supervisors, and tractor drivers away for a week, where they review their season and work out how they can do things better. And Osmond explained that this investment had been repaid several times over, not just through improved productivity, but through a boost in terms of loyalty and also a shared purpose across his team. So we're going to look at breeding now. In the late 90s, we invested in a breeding program. This was a bold step for what at that time was a relatively small business. Our original Ava variety, which we launched in 2003, was the first UK-grown premium berry in the market, and it allowed us to create a point of difference with our customers. Over the years, we've added to the Ava portfolio, and recently we launched our first short-day varieties, Ava Alicia and Ava Catalina. These varieties are currently being grown commercially in Spain, Morocco, and also in Egypt. And last summer, we were very proud to release our first raspberry varieties, Ava Monet and Ava Dali. These varieties are higher yielding, they're more efficient to pick due to higher average berry weight. Monet averaged just under 10 grams across our UK season, and they're also sweeter, meaning that both varieties are sold for higher prices. Staying with the artist's theme, I don't know if you've heard the story of Picasso and the napkin. Legend has it that Picasso was walking in a Paris market when he's approached by a female admirer who asked if he would draw a sketch on her napkin. Picasso duly obliged, created a drawing, and handed back the napkin, but not before asking for £1,000,000. The lady was shocked. "How can you ask for so much money? It only took you a minute to do." Picasso politely required, "No, it took me 40 years to learn how to do this in a few minutes, to be able to do this in a few minutes." Breeding takes considerable investment, as many of you here know. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it takes many years to develop new varieties. The Scottish raspberry sector has been in decline, and just as the Renaissance artists brought us out of the Dark Ages, with Ava Monet and Ava Dali, we've started a renaissance in Scottish raspberries. On my travels, I also considered investment and ownership of breeding. Over the last 20 years, there's been a transition from government-funded, levy-funded open programs through to private businesses. Recently, the East Malling program was sold to the global giant Bayer, the latest step, I would say, in the corporatization of berry breeding. Whilst private businesses, including ourselves, do drive success, I would question whether value is being taken away from growers and think that this value needs to be shared, which leads to a general point about funding for research and development. In the UK, we recently, as growers, voted to dismantle our levy body, AHDB, which was due to a perceived mismanagement, shall we say, of funds. However, I would say that we as growers weren't engaged enough with AHDB, and the result is a potential threat to funding of research and development in berries, including open programs. You're fortunate, from what I can see, with hort innovation in Australia, and it seems to me, from the outside looking in, that you as growers are far more invested and spend more time in understanding how your money is spent. Whilst I was in New Zealand, Julian Rain told me the amazing story of Sungold kiwi fruit. Sungold are higher yielding, disease resistant, and sweeter than the traditional green Hayward variety. This is an example of massive step change through breeding, and I believe that we can do the same in berries. Traditional programs, such as ourselves, Angus, are starting to use molecular markers and genomic prediction to speed up the breeding process. As Mike mentioned, Rick Swan and others, Lim Group, who I visited in the Netherlands, are close to perfecting growing berries from seed, although companies have been at it for a long, long time. Desirable characteristics such as flavour and berry size can be fixed in mother lines, and when crossed, the resulting F1 hybrid combines the best of both. When I was in the UK, I spent a fascinating few hours with Professor Cathy Martin at the John Innes Institute in Norfolk. Cathy has used gene editing to alter the metabolic pathway in tomatoes so that they can produce vitamin D. This is a first for any plant, and just 4 of these so-called biofortified tomatoes give us a recommended daily amount of vitamin D. You may have read that Pairwise in the US recently announced that they are using gene editing to develop seedless blackberries. The possibilities are endless. By harnessing new breeding techniques, I believe that we can emulate the Sungold kiwi fruit and breed more disease-resistant, more nutritious, sweeter, and higher-yielding berries. Now, let's turn our attention to production. First and foremost, we're growers. Our family started growing in the late 60s. The east coast of Scotland, which is shown in the video, has a mild maritime climate. It's our sunshine coast, and it's ideally suited to berry production, particularly during the long summer days. We've always been proud to be berry pioneers. My father put up the first polytunnels in Scotland in the mid-90s. Unfortunately, later that same summer, they were also the first polytunnels in Scotland to collapse. Since then, we've moved into tabletop and substrate production. We now have 20 growers in the UK, all part of a cooperative Angus growers. All of our growers are paid on the same transparent commission basis. This transparency is key to our success, and I strongly believe that by marketing our fruit as a group, we're more relevant to our customers, and I'm confident this results in better prices. Our scale also allows us to test and trial new technology. Last season, we started using UVC treatment commercially for powdery mildew using Saga Robotics, and we're doubling our usage this coming summer. We're also using UVC in our pack house because we believe it cuts down the incidence of mold. This year, we're trialling drone pollination with Polybee, who are here, and we think this will give us a yield benefit when it's cooler or hotter than our bees would like. With companies including Bitwise, we're also continuing our quest for the Holy Grail, which is knowing what we're going to pick over the next few days. Unlike here in Australia, where you're able to grow berries year-round, our season, particularly in Scotland, being much further north, is shorter. Therefore, we've established several farming joint ventures around the world to give us year-round production. In each case, we have a 50% shareholding in partnership with a local grower. Fine in theory. However, partnering with several different nationalities, each with cultural idiosyncrasies, legal systems, and languages, has been one of the defining challenges of my career. In the south of England, at Isle Fruits, we grow 14 hectares of glasshouse strawberries, heated by biomass, cropping in the spring and autumn, either side of our Scottish season. Further south in Morocco, where there's a good combination of climate, water, and labour availability, we have 3 joint ventures totaling over 250 hectares of raspberries and blueberry production, cropping from October to June, so in our counter season. The fruit is transported by road to the UK via France and Spain, taking between 4 and 5 days. Further afield, in central Chile, we have a 100-hectare blueberry farm, Nevado Escocés, which means Scottish snowy mountain, the fruit from which is shipped by sea to Europe, a journey that takes between 4 and 5 weeks. In addition to our own production, our teams source from around 16 other countries to give our customers and their customers what they want, which is 12 months' supply of berries. It's quite a jigsaw puzzle. We all know how volatile berries are, and the only thing our team does know every day is the day is not going to go according to plan. With a couple of days to move the fruit after arrival, there's not much room for error. So let's briefly consider the future of production. In recent years, we've seen a move out of the soil into substrate. The majority of UK, Spanish, and Moroccan berry production is now in substrate in multi-span tunnels. I would term this mid-tech. When I was in the Netherlands, I spent some time with Michael Zwan of Rick Zwan, one of the world's largest fruit and vegetable breeders, as you know. He posed the intriguing question, is the tomato grower of today the strawberry grower of tomorrow? The Dutch have pioneered large-scale, intensive glasshouse production, and I believe that we have an opportunity, particularly with climate change and water scarcity in some of the traditional counter regions such as Morocco and Spain, we have an opportunity to adopt these higher tech, data-driven systems in places like the UK and to increase our berry production and expand our season there. So, finally, my favourite topic, the marketing of berries. The UK grocery market, as Mike commented on, is one of the most sophisticated and competitive in the world. We always had intense competition between our big four, as they were known, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, and Morrisons. But over the last 10 years, with the entry of the discounters Aldi and Lidl, that competition has gone to new levels, and they have increased their market share to a combined 20%. In response, supermarkets have come up with price match. So all of the big four now guarantee that they match the discounters on a significant proportion of their lines. It's about 20% in the case of produce. This may have checked the rise of the discounters for now. However, the UK market will continue to have a relentless focus on price, and that ultimately puts pressure on grower returns. Let's have a look more closely at the UK berry market. This is my only slide with numbers on it. As you can see, the market has grown, and as Mike mentioned, to break the £2 billion barrier. Berries is the hero category in supermarkets, accounting for around 25% of total fruit sales. It's not uncommon for strawberries to be the #1 selling line in the entire store. As you can see, we're still seeing strong double-digit growth well over 10% in the last year. So how have we achieved this? The main driver of this growth has been tiering, whereby retailers segment their offer into different ranges, each aimed at different consumer demographics and eating occasions. We have an entry-level wonky or value tier, which will always be the cheapest on the shelf, and it's making up 10% of the share. We do this through small pack size and looser specification. The standard tier makes up the lion's share of the sale, and now would commonly have 3 pack sizes. So we have a 250 gram for 2 people pack, the core 400 gram, enough for a family meal, and my favourite, large packs, now up to a kilo for regular berry eaters. And finally, we have the top tier. Examples being Sainsbury's Taste the Difference, Marks and Spencer's Red Diamond, and Aldi Specially Selected Red Ruby. These ranges will be made up of defined varieties which are consistently sweeter with a tougher specification based on size, shape and colour. As you can see, the premium category is the fastest growing, over 30%, which is very encouraging and shows that customers are prepared to pay, in this case around 20% more, for a consistent eating experience. Whilst tiering has been phenomenally successful at growing berry sales, it's added a lot of complexity, which I think may now have gone too far in the UK. Our pickers often grade fruit based on size, shape and colour into as many as 4 different punnets at the same time. This decision-making process slows down picking and therefore increases costs, and tougher specifications also mean more waste. These have reached the point where in some cases the minimum size for potatoes is actually smaller than the minimum size for some strawberry lines. Here in Australia, the approach, as we saw at Hillwood in particular, to me is refreshingly more simple. You pick it, you cool it, and you ship it. I'm sure there must be a balance to be struck somewhere in the middle. So, we've had amazing growth in berries, and demand continues to grow. Who is winning? Well, we have cheap retail prices, so clearly the consumer. And our retailers are very profitable, as I'm sure is the case here. And who is losing? As farmers and growers, we take by far the most risk in the food supply chain for the least reward. How have we let this happen? And more importantly, what can we do about it? We do have some protections in the UK. We have the Grocery Supply Code of Practice, or GSCOP, which has been effective at stamping out unfair retail practices such as requests for lump sums and excessive customer complaint and artwork charges. And it also stipulates fair notice periods. GSCOP, however, has no remit over commercial relationships. And it was interesting here this morning that you have an equivalent coming in next year in Australia. Reflecting back, it took quite a few years for GSCOP to have teeth in the UK, and that was down to individuals and who the adjudicator was and how they stood up to retailers. So it's certainly something I would focus on. And also, it's very important that your teams are trained in the code and that they know how to thread it into conversations with retailers. But I'm sure it will help. Acknowledging the possible market failure in the UK, the government's currently undertaking a review of fairness in the horticultural supply chain. Relationships and ways of working between growers and retailers vary. Berries, by their very nature, are volatile. And therefore, I think that the closer that you can get to supply and demand dictating price, the better. The ultimate version of this would be the Dutch and Belgian auctions, where buyers have to bid every day for fruit. The clock starts high and counts down. So if you want a cheap price, you've got to hold your nerve. In Norway, growers have an exemption from competition law. So every week, grower representatives get together and discuss the market situation, and they dictate the price to the retailers. Perhaps surprisingly, there's 99% compliance. The result? Norwegian strawberry prices are almost exactly double those in the UK. 15 years ago, the majority of berries in the UK were sold by 4 or 5 marketing companies. Retailers have since encouraged a direct model with tends to be larger growers. After initial honeymoon period, there's a danger that these growers become price takers. I think that we sell stronger when we leverage our combined scale, increasing our relevance to customers. Let's look elsewhere in the fresh food chain for solutions. The recent egg crisis is worth exploring. After a surge in energy and feed prices in the UK, the egg market cracked. Retailers refused to increase contract prices, and growers or producers were losing out vast amounts of money. So what did they do? They stopped restocking, and the availability of eggs plummeted. This reached the point that eggs were rationed in supermarkets in the UK. Unheard of. Retailers then had to pay more, a lot more, and the price of eggs more than doubled. This egg crisis led to index-linked contracts, where producers agree to prices based on cost of production, sometimes called cost plus. Therefore, if feed makes up half of the cost and the price of feed increases, then the egg price increases proportionally. Cost plus is the norm in the UK for many dairy and beef contracts, and potentially offers a more consistent return to producers. While such cost-plus models go against my free market nature, I do think, given the situation we find ourselves in, they may be worth considering as a way of resetting our relationship with customers. So, working together, fairer relationships, and more transparent pricing are possible solutions. What else can we do? Look at this map of the world, and what can you see? The UK is at the centre. Of course it is. It's where it should be. Whilst travelling, I was struck by the remarkable diversity of markets around the world and the opportunities these could present to growers. In New Zealand, Zespri and Rocket Apples have built amazingly successful businesses exporting to lucrative markets. Last year, Scotland exported over £800 million of salmon to over 40 countries all around the world. Why can't we export more berries? One of the biggest learnings from my travels was this opportunity to build export markets, particularly in the Middle East and in Southeast Asia, where there's a growing middle class and soaring berry demand. At Angus Soft Fruits, we now export to Europe, the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Our Ava Magnum strawberries are the #1 selling product line in the entire store in Spinneys in Dubai. We also export CS Fresh in Singapore. Australia, like the UK, being an island with a relatively large population, has a strong domestic market. Being closer, you are better placed to access these Asian markets. However, I think we grow better strawberries, so watch out. In the UK, our government, particularly since Brexit, talks up the opportunities to export. However, is still to engage with the detailed requirements of market access to many Asian countries. From what I can see, you're well ahead of us in identifying the opportunity. With a clear export strategy and support for our growers, I think we need a Jenny in the UK. So, in the UK, by far the majority of fruit and vegetables are sold under retailer private labels, with limited differentiation between retailers. Exports open up the opportunity to brand, which we do under 3 labels: Good Natured, Ava and Angus, depending on the customer and the market. You're fortunate in Australia that a large proportion of your fruit is still sold under your own labels. This gives you more ownership, so I would encourage you to invest in these labels and build them into true brands to strengthen your position in the market. So, in conclusion, whilst it's been a tough few years, I'm still optimistic for the future. We're seeing advances in breeding techniques, which I truly believe will allow us to produce bigger, sweeter, more nutritious and more disease-resistant berries. And by adopting new production systems and technology, we can grow our berries more efficiently. However, my main message is the need to focus on how we market our fantastic berries. We need to rebalance our relationships with our customers so that we, growers, who take by far the majority of the risk, are better rewarded. In my opinion, we can do this by diversifying the category through tiering driven by varietal innovation. We can develop better, more sustainable relationships with our customers. Let's sell stronger together and export into new markets and build our brands. Hopefully, I've outlined some of the solutions to tackling our challenges. I'm sure that you have some alternatives, and I look forward to discussing these with you over the next few days. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.